And the only thing that Luke bothers to write down is when he talks about money, because it's all relationships, right? Help those who need it. Don't take advantage of other people. Be happy with what you have. It's all about relationships, and that's where our priorities come in.
Hi, Langga.
This is Jared.
And this is Apple.
Welcome to the Langga Speaks podcast.
Join our beloved conversations
about God's love and joy. Hi mga Langga, our guest for today is one of the co-founders of WalletWin, a financial startup that helps everyday Catholics get intentional with money. Radical generosity is the name of their game. Here's our conversation with Jonathan Texeira. Hello everyone! We're so happy to have you, Jonathan, here in this show, Langga Speaks podcast. Actually, one of our friends, just gonna give a shout out to him because he's the one who's like, please interview the Texeiras. I'm like, okay, sure. Let me email them after telling them a feedback, which they were gracious enough to reply. And I'm like, finally, we have one of the co-founders of WalletWin, Jonathan Texeira, with us.
Thank you for having me on the show. It's a pleasure to be here.
And guys, by the way, we're recording this at 6:40 a.m. in his home.
Oh yeah, which state are you based? Sorry, Jonathan, I forgot.
Yes, we're in Nebraska, so it's like
Nebraska.
pretty much the dead center of the continental U.S.
Oh, okay.
But they're neighbors with Warren Buffett, I think.
No, I have driven past his house though. I mean, it's very modest. It's a very modest house.
Oh, well,
I think he's owned the same house for like 40 years or something.
See,
something like that.
I told you they're neighbors. That's why
It's
I can't agree with everything that he does or says, but he does have some good things.
Yeah, he does have some good things.
So let's dive in before the kids wake up. Anyway, so how did all of this happen? You know, the journey towards being a good Catholic that's good with money, because you rarely find it's either they're very good at their faith and they want to be detached from anything that makes them rich, but at the same time it's their desire to be wealthy.
Rich.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Sure thing. Well, so I was raised Catholic, grew up, Catholic family, went to mass every week, all that stuff. When I was a teenager, I started thinking, you know what? I think I know more. I know better than this. So I still played along. But when I was going to college, I thought, okay, here's my chance. And I thought I was going to be done with going to church and all that stuff. But I ran into a missionary my first week on campus, and we started hanging out, and he was a nice guy. He introduced me to some other people, and they were really nice. And eventually, it was just the love that community had for me and for each other that I witnessed, that I thought, there's something going on. What do these people have? I want what they have. Turns out it was a relationship with Jesus. And so I joined a Bible study. I learned how to pray, learned how to read scriptures, all that stuff. I was all in. And then fast forward a few years, when I graduated, I became a missionary, just like the one who helped me. And so did Amanda, though we had not met each other yet, my wife. And then we met. We knew who each other were. We were both with the same organization, right? And then a few years later, we were in a smaller group, actually talked to each other. I realized that she was pretty neat. Started going on dates.
I love this understated kind of compliment he's throwing just because Amanda is.
We can cross check with Amanda maybe later in a future recording.
Are you actually neat? So then, anyway, we got engaged, and we got married. And at that time, I didn't know how to do anything with money except spend it. And I wasn't budgeting. If I wanted to buy something, I looked at what the price was. And then I'd take out my phone. I'd look at what my bank balance was. And if the balance was larger than the price, I'd buy it.
You definitely are a Jonathan, bro.
I've noticed. Quite, familiar.
Yeah, every time Amanda throws something like, and I see a package that he didn't mention, I'm like, he is my tribe.
But so, and I would never think about, you know what? You need to pay rent next week. Or, hey, there's not a lot of food in the kitchen. You might need to go to the grocery store. None of that. So then I'd start using a credit card to pay for things when I didn't have any money. And I'd be like, I'm getting paid in, 4 days. So I'll put it on the card. When that comes, then I'll pay it off. Okay. And then that's what I would do. But then because I paid off the card, I had less money to begin with now. So then I would run out of money sooner. And then I put more on the card. And then I'd have even less when I paid it off. And then eventually I just didn't have enough to pay it off anymore. So I started building up credit card debt. So that wasn't very good. Anyway, we got engaged. We hadn't really talked about money yet. We lived across the country from each other. So she lived, we'd fly back and forth to see each other while we were dating. And I lived in New York City, which was very expensive, which was not good either for me. So I ran up all this credit card debt. We got engaged. And then it was like that day where she goes, hey, like, do you have any debt? We should have talked about that a lot sooner. I go, well, I thought, well, she already said yes. So, she said, yeah, I've got these credit cards. And anyway, so then she did what she should not have done and gave me the, whatever it was, like $4,000 or $5,000 to pay it off. Which she should have waited until we were married. Thankfully, it all worked out. But that was not a wise move, and we do not encourage other people to do it that early. So anyway, you thought I'd learned my lesson, but for the honeymoon, I thought, you know what? If we put this thing on a credit card, we're gonna get 3 nights free or whatever.
Points.
So we can have a longer honeymoon. And everybody going, you only get one honeymoon, like make it awesome, make no spare no expense. I was like, all right. So we went on I think it was 10 days honeymoon to Cancun in Mexico, this like resort. Anyway, and we had talked about this. It was like, oh yeah. We'll save the money with the free nights or whatever. And then it was my responsibility to pay the card.
By the way, Jonathan, a lot of our audiences are
gonna relate to that particular story.
Yeah, and a lot of our listeners are actually discerning to be married, like young couples as well. So please be clear with your.
Please go into detail.
Don't do this. What I'm saying. I just forgot, and then we probably got an email or something. I don't know, or it just hit me. While we're on the honeymoon, the card payment is due, and so we're in another country. They had some internet, and there was we were able to like message. Or Amanda was able to message her folks and like have them like transfer money or deposit all the money from like the cards we got at our wedding. And it was a big mess. And it's again started to not even establish, because that happened before, but really solidify this narrative, especially in Amanda's mind, that irresponsible Jonathan messes it up with the money, and then responsible Amanda comes in and has to clean it up. And that was not a good thing. We had our first fight of our like 2-day-old marriage about money. And once the dust settled, we thought, man, this is terrible. We don't want this the rest of our lives. And we know it can be a really big problem. It's one of the leading factors of separation and divorce. And even if it's not that, just tension and resentment in a marriage. So we didn't want no part of that. So when we got back home, we had to figure out what to do with money, and maybe a little bit more. I had to figure out what to do with money. So we started, reading books and whatever we could get our hands on. And certainly, Dave Ramsey was a really big influence back then. He's a Christian, evangelical Christian here in America, talks about money a lot. He's been doing it for decades. And so we kind of followed his stuff. And we got out of debt. We weren't making a lot of money. We were fundraising our salary as missionaries.
Wow.
But we leaned into fundraising a little bit more. Certainly I could have been better at it. But mostly it was just getting really creative. And again, they weren't nothing fancy, but like we sold Amanda's car because we lived at the same place and we worked at the same place. So we didn't really need 2 cars.
Right.
We didn't, obviously, certainly we didn't have any kids yet. So there wasn't really ever going to be that much that would pull us in 2 directions at once. So we went down to 1 car. We had moved. In that time span, we moved. So we sold a bunch of our stuff instead of moving it. Anyway, we got out of debt in 7.5 months. Oh, so it was our student loans put together, all these things. So we had about $25,000 or so.
Amazing.
So we paid all that off.
It's just like listening to it as a guy. It must have been difficult for us because we're like the provider. We don't want our egos to get the best of us. I don't want to let go of the things that I accumulated. I got this. So what was going through your head? Like, I don't want to, like there's a temptation. Like I know better than you. Like I know what I'm doing. Because there's a lot of people like that.
I had to come to that point because, right, she's trying to get me to read this book or that book. I'm like, babe, we can figure this out. And then I don't know how it happened, but I finally did come to this realization that it was my plan on how to handle money that got us into the majority of this debt. And in this, like, doing things my way got us here. So if I keep doing things my way, I don't know if it's going to get any better. Maybe if I'm actually thinking about it and all that, like, it'll get marginally better, but I need something else. I need something from the outside to come in. I need to, try as I might, right? If I'm putting something together and I can just take my hand and I can get the screw in maybe a good amount of the way, but actually finish the job and make the thing sturdy. Like I have to go get the screwdriver off the wall, something outside of me, and use that. So I'm still doing it. I'm still using it, right? I have the forethought to think I need a tool. I need to add something to what I've already got. And then I can implement the plan. So yeah, I had to get there. And then eventually, we were all in, man. We were selling everything because we were moving, and we thought, well, here, we get a bunch of money and pay down the debt. So I was selling my bicycle that I didn't use that much. And this guy comes over to buy it, and it was not for sale, but he saw my Super Nintendo hooked up to the TV. It was still hooked up, I think. And he was buying the bike, I forget for how much. And then he goes, well, how much for that Super Nintendo and the games? I was like, what? So this is the decision moment. This is, what do I really want? Yes. Do I want to sit on my couch and play Mario Kart twice a month? Or do I want to get out of debt and free up my income so that my wife and I can actually do what we want to do with the money instead of just automatically having to send it off to pay the debt every month?
It's crazy.
So I sold the Super Nintendo, and it hurt in the moment. It hurt in the moment, but it was definitely worth it. So we paid off the debt real fast. All our other missionary friends were thinking, what do I need to do? So we started talking to them. We led classes at our missionary training. We'd meet with people one-on-one, like over lunch or dinner. We'd have people over to our house later. We just started, it was just the thing that we were known for. Then we started speaking at different things. And then one time a guy came over and we helped him with his, oh, you should do this. You should stop doing that. And then at the end, he goes, guys, this could be something. You could really like turn this into a thing. And we're like, you're crazy. What are you talking about? And then it was probably like a year, maybe a year later, we're like, man, maybe you had a point. Maybe we could try something. Because we were leading Dave Ramsey's class at our church. And, he's great. We like him. Certainly, we followed a lot of his advice, getting out of debt ourselves. But he does his teaching, but we're Catholic and we're running it at our church. And so we pause the video, or when he's done, okay, guys, now as Catholics, we also have to think about this and this and this or whatever. And so he's great. We like Dave. We spent time with him. He's cool. But he can only go so far. He does not take advantage of the nearly 2,000 years of people holier and smarter than me, or pray any of us, thinking and praying about these things and the wisdom of the church and all these things. So there's a whole lot more that we can look into, and the teaching of the church. There's a lot about money and how we relate with it and how we relate to other folks through it. And so, that's another one. That's why we started WalletWin, so that that Catholics can actually understand money as Catholics, that we can plumb the depths of these, nearly 2,000 years of wisdom and teaching and the examples of the lives of the saints. There are saints who, and I think maybe a lot of us tend to think of these when we think, well, how do I be Catholic with money? Who, right? They had a bunch of money, right? The Saint Francis, rich family, gives it all away. And he's begging for everything. But there's also St. Catherine Drexel here in America, who came from an unbelievably wealthy family, and then used her inheritance to fund a religious order which she founded. And then there's saints who were kings and queens, and had an immense wealth and power. And they're all saints, and they all had to interact with money. And yes, it looked different in the day-to-day, but there were still some underlying principles and beliefs that were the same across the board. And that is what we want to get to. Certainly some practical stuff. Here's the order you should do things in. Here's how to make a budget. Here's how to actually stick to it. All those things we teach, and they're very good. But the most important stuff is understanding money, relating to it as a Catholic, and making sure that the way we use money is one of the good works that we do, so that we may inherit eternal life.
Amen.
There's story after story, parable after parable in the Bible about money. And it's not that it's a bad thing, but we need to understand it correctly and use it well. If we can't, it's Jesus tells us the parable of the dishonest steward.
Yes.
This guy who's, hey, you owe, let's say the king, the ruler, you owe him, 50 whatever jugs of oil or whatever. Well, how about you pay him 75, and I'm going to take the extra 25 for myself.
Extra income.
And so he does it over and over. He's ripping people off. And then he hears he's about to get fired. So then he calls everybody back and he's like, hey, did I say 75? 50. All you need to do is 50. Let's rewrite that. Right. So he is still giving the king or whoever like what's due to him. He's not ripping him off. He's just cutting himself out. Because he knows, hey, if I do all this, everybody's going to be really happy because I'm going to cut a huge bit of their debt off. I'm canceling like half of their debt. So they're going to like me. So when I'm out on my own and have nothing, well, then maybe they might be nice to me. And Jesus holds this guy up as an example.
Exactly.
Right.
And everyone's like, what?
And he says, and I'm like, are you kidding me? Like it says right there, dishonest. But he goes, because, and essentially, you know, I'm paraphrasing a bit, but he's like, he knew what he was doing with money. He knew he was crafty with it, but he also understood, you know, he has a little bit of a conversion and he's cutting out his portion and all this. But he's cunning with it. He's wise. And then he says, this is one of the times when Jesus says, you know, those who, how does he say it? Like, if you can handle a little bit, something small and insignificant, well, then you can be trusted with bigger things. And he's talking about money. If you can be trusted, we think money is this huge thing. It can influence every part of our life. If you are found responsible with something insignificant as money, then you're worthy for eternal riches. Then I can trust you with the real stuff. And it's like, what? So we need to handle our money well. Right. It doesn't mean all of us are called to give all of it away. It doesn't mean that all of us have this divine right to incredible wealth and riches so that we can do good in the world. It's that we have a unique call to be caretakers, to be stewards of a particular amount of money. Some, yes, it will be great. Some, it will be small and they're called to a simple life. And others, maybe most of us, will be somewhere in the middle, a moderate amount of money, and we need to steward it well. But all of us are called to eternal life, and the way we handle our money can influence that.
Amen.
I just wanted to point out something that I picked up from the earlier part of the story with regards to your relationship with Amanda. And I think Jarek pointed it out earlier, how it was the inner conversion of your heart first, with regards to our pride. I think that's a lot of listeners who would relate to that when it comes to, but my point of view, my perspective is the correct one, and you would just be stubborn and say, no, I've been okay, I've figured it out before. And then when you get married, it's like we forget that you're two souls who are going to be in the covenant for the rest of your life. And you have to understand that the decisions you make are not just impacting yourself. You have to think about the good of your spouse as well. And so I think I just wanted to honor you there in that particular little part, because that wouldn't have been easy. I mean,
exactly.
I'm not going to ask how old you were when you got married, because a lot of our listeners would be pressured by that. But it's the whole, like, at least 2 decades for sure of a certain single track mind of just thinking of yourself. And then all of a sudden you're like, I love Mario Kart, but I love my spouse more, and I'm going to put her first. And I think that's something that a lot of Catholics, I think, can take away, because we think that money should not be included when we talk about stuff like that.
You know, it's very difficult in today's society, especially when you have social media and say, like, but I just posted that we had a vacation a week ago. I can't be telling people that I am in need of help or in debt. So I don't know how to get out of this. You know,
so how did you, going back to that, because your missionary friends also recognized the decisions you were making and how it impacted your life in starting a marriage. But how was it when you shared? I mean, you just came back from Mexico.
From
and then all of a sudden you're selling stuff off. I mean, how was the shift there? I mean, was it difficult for you, or what was running through your mind? But you knew you had to face people when you got back home.
Well, you know, right. So we have the big fight on the honeymoon, and then that was near the end of October. And then we kind of were figuring everything out, and Amanda's getting me on board. And then we really kind of, all right, let's do this in January. So the beginning of the new year, kind of took some of that, New Year's resolution energy or excitement or whatever, and put that to it. So, okay, we're going to start budgeting. And we thought it was going to be crazy to try to pay off our debt in a year. Like, if we say it's going to be a year, maybe we could actually get it done in a year and a half, because we're working so hard. And our first budget, I mean, we budgeted, golly, it was like $60 for groceries. Like it was a third, maybe a quarter of what we actually needed. Because we had no idea what we were spending.
Right.
No idea what we needed because we had just that disconnected from our spending. So we had to rearrange some of those categories during the first trip to the grocery store.
Yeah.
And we just, then we learned, next time we need a much higher number. And then, so over the next few months, we developed that skill. That's all it is. It's a skill.
To recalibrate
that anybody can learn. Like other skills, sure, it comes a little bit more naturally to others to some people than others, but all of us can learn it, and all of us need to learn it because we all have money to take care of, right? Budgeting isn't just saying no to everything. It is figuring out what your priorities are right now and making the plan so that your spending aligns with them. Because when John the Baptist is going out there telling everybody, hey, the Messiah is coming. You might want to do a couple things differently in your life so you don't go to hell. And they go amazingly, right? And this is in the beginning of Luke's gospel. Everybody's just like, oh, okay. What do we do, John? If only it was that easy when I was a missionary.
We'll all be in heaven.
But he goes, okay, what do we, so they go, what do we do? And he says, hey, you've got 2 cloaks, give one to the guy who doesn't have one, and do the same thing with your food. And then the soldiers or the tax collectors even are like, hey, what do we do? And he goes, stop ripping people off. And then the soldiers even go, what do we do? And he goes, hey, stop extorting people. Be happy with your wages. And then everybody, he says these things. It's money and it's money and it's money. That's all he talks about so far. And then everybody thinks, they go, wait a second. Is this guy the Messiah? All he did was talk about like being nice to people with your money. And he goes, no, he's coming. And then Luke writes down about what else happened. He goes, and then, this is a slight paraphrase. And then he told them the good news of Christ with many other exhortations or something like. And then he said some other stuff. But the thing that John leads with, the thing that everybody thought maybe this is him, when they heard it, and the only thing that Luke bothers to write down is when he talks about money, because it's all relationships, right? Help those who need it. Don't take advantage of other people. Be happy with what you have. It's all about relationships, and that's where our priorities come in. If we handle our money right, so much of it is our relationship to the people in our family, our relationship to people in our town, to our parish, if you really think about it, and maybe it makes you feel, and maybe it should make you feel a little bit of something in you, there is a relationship between me and the person who I will probably never meet this side of heaven, who sewed my shirt or made my shoes or really made any of the things that I use. So much of it's so far removed from me. What's my responsibility there in how I use my money and how I'm treating that relationship? So when we look at our budget, for instance, right, what are the priorities I have right now? How am I choosing to provide for my family? It's not just enough to go and get the money. We have to make a plan on how we're going to use it to take care of everybody. And that's the budget. That's why it's so cool. That's why it's so exciting to make a budget, because you have this little army of dollars, and you can say, okay, you guys get ready. We're going to the grocery store this month. You guys, I'm sending you to knock out the cell phone bill. This guys, we're going to attack that debt. Or you, hey, hang out for a little while because we're going on vacation in half a year. And you guys are coming with us. You get to, that's really fun. It's great because then you get to answer the call that God's putting on you on how to provide for your family, how to live your life, how to say yes to him. And of course, you're sending a nice big chunk of those guys, to the parish or to the missionary
Exactly.
or to whatever good work that you're helping to fund through your giving.
Jonathan, you and Amanda are proponents of this radical generosity, and for sure, a lot of our listeners will be like, "Okay, I get what you mean, but I don't have enough for myself, and now this guy is asking us to be generous as well, while we're on the journey of becoming more generous." Because there's this temptation to say that, you know what, we'll just be a little bit more generous when we're out of debt, or when we figure things out. They just leave the generosity part of like
when
what you're saying.
When things get better.
Yeah, when things get better. So, like, how do we start on being generous if we have nothing to offer ourselves?
The first step is to start. And we can get really discouraged thinking, oh, like you said, I'm barely doing things here myself, and I'm supposed to be taking care of other people through my giving. I don't think I can do that. Well, just start. You can probably give a little bit, of course, people might be thinking of Jesus tells the parable about the widow, all these rich people just, throwing the money in the collection. She comes, puts like one little coin in, and it's worth way more because she probably had some ideas on what she could have used that one little coin for. And I'll get back to this, but that can be us especially if we're budgeting. If I know I'm putting this money in the collection basket, and because I'm doing that, we're not going out to breakfast after Mass this week. Then I'm not only giving the gift of the money, but also this sacrificial gift of not doing this whatever else, this other good thing that I could have done with it and would still be good. But I'm all able to offer that up, right? Because you can only spend that dollar once. And so that can be any amount. And we can put a lot of pressure on ourselves because we get this idea, okay, well, I hear all these people talking about a tithe, right? I have to give 10% of my money. And it's from the Old Testament. And I mean, if you really go into it, you had to give all sorts of stuff, 10% of this and a third of that. There's like a lot of giving that was going on back then. But this tithe is certainly a big deal from then. But and it was like, you have to follow it, right? Like and we could end up like the Pharisees, right? We're following the law. We're doing what it says, but that's only because that's what it says,
Right.
and not what it's trying to encourage in our hearts. And of course, Jesus came, he fulfilled the law. And when he does this, right, it's this wild reality that we're in, where the law doesn't apply to us, but it does. And actually, maybe it's a little bit stronger, right? Jesus, he says, hey, I know. It said, don't kill anybody. And that's still true. But if you get really mad at him and you kind of killed him already in your heart. So don't do that either. Or, hey, I know, it does say, don't covet your neighbor's wife. That's still a rule. But if you're looking at anybody like that, you kind of already did in your heart. So let's cut that out too, right? So he fulfills the law. He doesn't go do away with it. And he usually asks us to an even higher standard. And so 10%, right? If that's okay, yeah, I'll throw 10% in. For some people, if you give 10% away, you can't eat, or you can't pay the electricity bill, or whatever it might be. You shouldn't give 10% if that's what's happening, because right, it's our response. We are given the responsibility to use our money to provide for ourselves and those under our charge, so our family and those who depend on us. So we need to be doing that. And then some folks on the other end, You could give 10%, not really notice it. And if that's the case, well, you shouldn't give 10%. You should give a whole lot more. So whatever the number is, and again, this makes it maybe for some a less satisfying answer, because it's not like, what do I do? Okay, great, I'll do it. You got to put some thinking into it, but you should give an amount that you feel, that if I wasn't given this much, I could do that instead.
That's a shawarma.
So you need to notice it. You need to feel it, and then you also need to be formed well enough to be able to discern what that's going to be, because you can't just say, "Hey, we're getting out of debt, right? So like we're going to give nothing because we're trying to get out of debt, or whatever it is, or I'm supporting people back home, so I'm not going to give anything." Now, maybe that might mean you don't give all the way up to 10. Maybe you do, but I don't think that probably qualifies for giving nothing. It should be somewhere, again, where you feel it, where we're not going to end up doing this thing that would be really nice because I'm giving. And that's where it's a real gift, because you're making a choice, right? Love is the choice, where I choose the beloved instead of me. Where, right, in the garden, Adam and Eve could have chosen God instead of themselves. And every day I could choose God instead of myself. And so in our giving, when I'm choosing God, or this, through this charity or this missionary, whatever good work I'm choosing to support, that's pulling me out of myself and helping me say yes to God cultivating charity and love in my heart.
Oh, I really like that. Actually, until now, I'm still stuck in the idea of having dollars as soldiers, and you would deploy them. I'm still stuck, because for me, that's like a total game changer in the way how you think about money. Especially if, like when you mentioned, not everybody is formed in the way how you should view money and our relationship with money with regards to the religious sense, because you always think about the saints who live in rags and their path to holiness was through dirt and like eating locusts, like Saint John the Baptist.
I think for us Filipinos, like especially in our faith, they try to highlight those saints that we don't hear about the other saints, like St. Catherine Drexel or the Martins. So like we don't hear about them because it speaks so much to the culture.
There's a disconnect.
That poverty is holiness, and this is the only way towards holiness. So whenever you get a certain amount, you should feel icky about it. So it's the question here that most of us have is that, is it really possible to be wealthy, and like you were mentioning in your book, without losing your soul? And as a Catholic, maybe I get promoted. I'm here in Dubai, especially when you guys come here in Dubai, you will see like, oh, what is happening? Everything is highest, biggest, shiniest. It's like the superlatives of superlatives in this nation that we're in. But the question that we have lingering in our heads for most Catholics in this particular question is that, how much is too much? Like, okay,
how much is just enough? Like, how much do I need so that I can get into heaven, but not like at the expense of losing my Mario
Do I
Kart?
take the Michael course or just go with the Chanel because I want to be excellent?
Oh man, that's good. I was reading this book it's how old is it now? I forget, maybe 50 years old or something now. This deacon wrote it, and is about money. And in it, he relates the story that he was talking to like all these people, and especially like rich people. And he is asking this question: how much is enough? How much do you need to be happy? And this one guy was really honest. He goes, all I need to be happy is $1 more. And if that's where you're at, you'll never be happy, because it's always there, right? I'll be happy if I just have a little bit more. You know what? we'll be generous when we have a little bit more. It's never going to happen, which is why we need to cultivate those habits early. We need to, because we're strengthening that giving muscle. We're strengthening our heart for others, so that when there is, if you're called to that, more money, well, you have the strength to lift it out of your bank account and put it somewhere else. Because if we haven't practiced that and we haven't built up the strength to do that with a smaller number, it's going to be really hard to do it when it's a larger number.
For sure.
And what's interesting, and something that we discover as we come at money with a more Catholic understanding, is there is a number, there is a line. It's not a number, not like every, a family. There's no equation, right? It's not like, okay, how many people are in your family? Okay, multiply by this number, and that's how much money is enough. It's not like that, but there is going to be a number for you and your family where you are, phrase again, another one that we've picked up somewhere is that you are at maximum fruitfulness. So, the Texeira family, if we had, this much, a certain amount more per month, we could do more things. We could probably do some things that are going to build stronger memories for our family. We could maybe figure out a little bit more, planning for the future. We could, put more aside for kids' education and the like. There would be legitimate uses for it. And we'd, maybe have a little bit more fun too. But there will be a point where, well, I think that's good enough for us.
Yeah.
And anything over that, well, that's where we start getting real generous with it.
Right.
And that doesn't mean like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm at this extravagant life. Now I think I've got enough. There is a point where the barn is full. And instead of building another one, we need to be giving that away.
Amen.
And that's it's going to be different for everybody. Even, like two families living next to each other, same number of kids, same ages, like everything's the same. Like on the outside, numbers wise and stuff, like they're going to have different like numbers for where they're going to be most fruitful. And right, it's like watering a plant. If you don't give it the right amount, if you give it too little, well, it doesn't grow enough. And if you give it too much,
she's laughing.
The roots
right now
rot.
Because he just
she's laughing right now because I just killed a plant by watering it too much.
There you go.
Literally just this morning.
And the name of the plant is a peace lily. So I just said rest in peace. It's not my fault.
Jonathan, just because I know we've also taken too much of your time, but just because we also have also a growing family. We have a 5-year-old, 2-year-old, another one coming on the way, and it's more of because you also have a growing family.
Yeah, now on their 4th, I've been planning on their 4th.
I know. I would really love to touch upon that aspect of your family life, but I think that because you both are
we will fly them in. Yeah. We will fly them in and have it recorded here.
And you can see the biggest and the highest. No, but my question is maybe purely for us and for any of our listeners who are also parents. How would you teach? Can you give us like practical examples of how you're able to convey this kind of teaching, this perspective with regards to money? Because Jarek and I believe from a young age, they should already be formed as well with regards to that. Do you what other practices have you been doing with your kids?
Yeah, the first, probably and most important thing is to model it, right? To live it yourself. So to be making your budget, to handle your money well, to give it, and as you're doing those things intentionally, be intentional in drawing your children's attention to it and talking to them about it. When I was a kid, I remember seeing on my dad's little table next to his bed, read it in 1 year Bible. It's like this day read this day read that.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing he's read the whole thing, but he didn't talk to me about it. You know, he didn't say, "Hey, you know, I'm reading the Bible this year, and this is what I've learned today." That, you know, he never like brought me into it. You know, I saw them, my parents sitting at the table, you know, kind of double checking the amounts in their account and everything, making sure it was all lined up. I know my dad did something on the computer with money, but I don't know what it was. I'm guessing now it was probably a budget. And so I saw the things, even though they weren't even thinking maybe about teaching me. So the example is important, but then explaining the example. Hey, you know, I'm putting this money, I'm bringing this money with me to mass today, and I'm going to put it in the basket or whatever it is, the slot, when it's time, because it's important for us to do our part to, you know, pay the bills around here. And it's like a gift to God, right? We see at Mass, you know, they bring up the bread and the wine that's going to be transformed into the Eucharist. Well, those are gifts, and our money can be a gift too. That's really great. Having them have some money, whether you're giving them some money like as an allowance, whether they're doing extra chores around the house to earn some money, but then sitting down with them. So that's good, right? Just helping them understand money like that. But then sitting down with them, okay, all right, you have this much money. You should probably, you know, all right, you got $5 this month, like, or this week. You should probably keep one of those for Sunday to put in the collection. Or, okay, what's this thing that you want to get? You know, all right, we're going to save up for it. We're going to take a couple dollars each week. We're going to put it aside in this other envelope or this other jar or whatever it is. And we're going to wait until it gets up to whatever amount, and then we can go get it.
Awesome.
So it's just inviting them into what you're doing, and then just thinking, okay, what can I teach them? And especially once you've learned some things, it's good to just reflect on, okay, what would have been really nice to know before I did? What do I wish I knew? And then you should probably teach your kids that.
A lot of things.
All of it.
Yeah.
This is great. Like, this is such a joy of a conversation. We have, by the way, before we end this, I'd like you to invite our listeners.
How can they find
I'm a listener
you
of the
and your
Catholic
wife?
Money Show, but please do. The Texeiras are great, especially when they do their Saints series on the podcast, where they dive into the life of the saints and related with money and management and all of these things. So please do, Jonathan. This is the time for you to please invite. We call our listeners. That's why it's called the Langga Speaks podcast. Langga is a dialect in the Philippines, which means beloved.
Ooh.
So yeah, so you can just.
How would you want to speak any other dialect but that one?
Because she's from a different province in the Philippines. They call Langga their beloved. We call the Langga God.
Yeah.
Our beloved. So please do invite our listeners here in the Langga Speaks podcast to your show.
Sure thing. Yeah. We would love to have you guys hanging out with us more. You can find our podcast, which is called The Catholic Money Show, pretty much anywhere you can find a podcast. And if you do search it somewhere and it doesn't show up, let us know, because we've submitted it everywhere and it should show up. But yeah, so that's The Catholic Money Show. You can search for it anywhere. Our website is WalletWin.com. Like, you don't want to lose with your money. You want WalletWin, WalletWin.com, and then you'll find everything there about our book, a link to the podcast, our WalletWin Academy, which is home to the Catholic Money course, where we go through all the fundamentals of how to handle your money and the faith part of it too, how to think about money and understand it, know what your relationship with it is currently, and maybe identify a couple things that you'd like to change about that. We've got kids classes. You talked about kids. We've got WalletWin Kids for grade school, middle school, high school, all sorts of good things over at WalletWin.com. But yeah, we do put a lot of good things through our podcast, The Catholic Money Show, which is at WalletWin.com/podcast or anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Thank you, Jonathan, for that. And,
Thank
you know,
you.
we were praying for your mission. We're praying for the dreams of the Texeiras as you go. You're blessing a lot of people. You've blessed me. I don't even remember how I
Discovered
Yeah, I think I was searching for Catholic and money because, like you said, it's there's a lot of denomination doing the Catholic the money part, but I want some representation of money on a Catholic perspective. I'm like, oh, these people are doing it through the Catholic lens. Oh, let me try. And so I've been listening. They're my they're my buddy when it comes to the traffic of the United Arab Emirates going to Sharjah.
Yeah, and then he just brings home those lessons. Actually, every time he gets to listen to your episode on the drive home, he just talks about it over dinner with me.
You know, Jonathan, I'm like this with Apple. Apple, you know what? Bada beam, bada boom.
And I'm like, I'm sorry, what? I was with the kids the whole day. I'm completely lost. Where are you coming from?
That's it. That's it.
Really,
like his bada beam, bada boom.
Yeah, I really, really, really appreciated your time with us today. Like my heart is just overjoyed with the stuff I heard from you today.
Yeah, this won't be our last. We still need to verify a few details with Amanda. Hopefully, when we get her to
especially
the podcast,
when she receives packages at home.
This is just half the truth of what is. So that's it, mga langga. Thank you so much for listening with us. I hope that you found value in this episode. This is me, Jeric.
And this is Apple.
Always reminding you na palangga kasang Diyos. See you next week. Bye.